bakers, I'm Tanya and welcome to Global Bakes. Since it's almost St. Patrick's Day, I thought it would be a good time to show you my Irish brown bread. This bread is one of my most requested recipes. People either want me to make them a loaf and bring it to them or show them how to make it because they don't believe they can do it themselves. But it is one of the simplest recipes. It's a quick bread. It doesn't have to rise. There's no yeast. Takes about 10 minutes to throw it together and then 40 minutes in the oven and you're good to go. So to get started, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the honey butter. I like to slather my brown bread with honey butter, and I know that's not exactly healthy, but you know, I've got whole wheat in the recipe, so it balances out. So I'm going to take one whole stick of butter, put that in a bowl, and you're going to add about 1/3 of a cup of honey. I'm not measuring this, just kind of eyeballing it. And I'm going to just mash that up. My butter has been sitting out for a little while, so it's mostly soft. I will tell you it's snowing here right now, so it's kind of cool in here, cooler than normal. So the butter didn't get really, really soft, but that's no problem. You can use a mixer for this if you prefer. It's just going to take longer to set up when you put it in the refrigerator because that will really soften the butter if you put it in a mixer. So I am just going to mix it by hand. Should take about a minute. Just mash that honey in with the butter. Stir it around. Like I said, this is a super popular bread. I've had people not believe that I made it at home. I've used this many times when I've had friends that have had either surgery or having a baby or something like that. I'll make shepherd's pie, which is one of my favorite dishes, and this brown bread, which goes beautifully with shepherd's pie, and give it to them. And I had one friend who just had her 4th baby, and her older 3 girls loved it so much they wanted me to come to their house and make the bread for them. So it looks like we've got the butter mostly mixed in with the honey. You can see it's pretty homogeneous. You want to make sure that it's as mixed as you can get it before you put it back in the fridge because you won't be able to stir it after it sits for a while. So I am just going to take this lump of deliciousness. You can taste it too. Yep, that's perfectly sweet enough. If you want a little bit more, go ahead and add it now. Pile it into your dish and pop it in the fridge. When I did that, I got out my butter for the bread. You want that butter to be cold. So I've already diced up some butter that's going to go into the bread, but I was keeping it in the refrigerator because I'm going to cut it in and I want it to be cold when it goes in. I'm going to take a large bowl and I'm going to use 2 different flours. This is an Irish brown bread, so we can't just use all-purpose flour. But if you only use whole wheat flour, your bread is going to be really dense, really tough, really heavy. It's not going to have any lightness at all. The whole wheat flour has the wheat germ still partially in it, which is why it's called whole wheat. All-purpose flour has all the wheat germ and everything else removed from it. So, and it's processed and bleached and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to use a combination of the two. If you use about half and half, then you'll get a good mixture. So I have 190 grams of all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to dump that right into my bowl. And 190 grams of whole wheat. Another thing about whole wheat flour is it can go rancid quickly. If you don't use it very often, you want to make sure that you keep it in the freezer. I store mine in a Ziploc bag in the freezer to keep it from going rancid. All-purpose flour doesn't really have a chance to go rancid, especially not in my house. But even if I'm only going to keep it in the house for a couple of weeks, I still keep the whole wheat flour in the freezer. So after you've put your both of your flours into your bowl, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Just a little bit there to sweeten it up. And then I've already mixed together a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of baking soda. We're going to use both of those to help lift this bread. And after that, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You can use sea salt, just regular table salt, whatever works for you. So just kind of give those a stir. just to mix them all in together, especially your rising agents, your baking powder and baking soda. You want to get those evenly distributed. We're not going to use a mixer for this recipe because that would really create the gluten. Plus it takes away from the fact that this is a super quick bread. Just use this one bowl and I'm good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to take 2.5 tablespoons of butter that I've already chopped up. I've got it in kind of small pieces. I'm just going to add all of that in there. And you can do a couple of different things here to get that butter in there. Sometimes people will use a pastry cutter or a fork or a couple of knives. I just get in there with my fingers. And I just squeeze the butter and the flour together. I'm going to do that until I have the butter broken up into pea-sized balls. Now I'm going to take about 40 grams of instant oats, or you can use a quick cooking oat, instant oats, or you just want to make sure that you're not using steel cut or anything like that. You can use whatever oats you have on hand that are plain. So just dump those in, mix them into your flour. Makes this bread even heartier. And now I'm going to take a half a cup of, you can use either sour cream or plain yogurt. You don't want to use any kind of a flavored yogurt. I accidentally one time used vanilla. I had some vanilla Greek yogurt, and you do really get the flavor of vanilla, so don't do that. This is sour cream, which is my favorite. It gives your bread just a little bit of a tang. I'm just going to pour that in there. You almost cut this in with your spatula, a little bit like you cut the butter in with your fingers. It's going to stay in clumps, but don't worry, it's going to mix up here in a few minutes. Okay, that's mostly mixed in there, so we're going to get rid of these. The last thing you're going to add to this is some milk. Now I have about a half a cup of almond milk in here. You can use whole milk, low-fat milk, whatever kind of milk that you have on hand. Almond milk is a good replacement for just about any milk in baking. It tastes the same. It doesn't change the flavor. As long as you don't have any nut allergies, you're fine. But I'm not going to add this whole half a cup at one time. I'm going to do it about a tablespoon at a time, and I'm going to mix and see where it's at. And I'm going to keep doing that until I get a dough that's not sticky, but that's holding together. So I'm going to go about a tablespoon there. You can continue using your spatula. I just like to get my hands in there. It just makes it a little easier, even though it is messy. I can really turn the flour from the bottom. Okay, we're going to add another tablespoon. Sometimes I will end up using the whole half a cup, and sometimes I'll only use maybe a third of a cup. So it really depends kind of on the atmosphere, how dry your flour is. The drier it is in your house and outside, the more your flour is going to absorb the liquid. So sometimes you might not use the exact same amount of liquid in a recipe. I've already preheated my oven. You're going to bake this at 375 Fahrenheit. I've got the oven on, and I have a pizza stone that I've already put in the oven. One thing that I really like to do with bread is to preheat the stone and then put the bread directly on the stone because that helps it cook from underneath as well as on top, and it really gets the bread cooking as soon as you put it in. Okay, so I put in the last of my half a cup. It must be really dry in here. Once I get it all mixed together, I'm not going to mess with it too much. I'm just going to gather it into a ball here inside the bowl. I've got a piece of parchment paper ready. And I'm going to just take this ball of dough, gather it up, put it right in the center. When I said this was a quick dough and it was rustic, I was not kidding. But this is the way that it is made in Ireland. I'm going to rotate this just a little bit, push down, knead it with your hand, maybe just a couple of times to get it to kind of come together. Just gonna pick up that little piece there, pull it back and push it in. Do that as you rotate. The other good thing about this parchment paper is it's keeping the mess all in one place. So less for my husband to clean up when I'm done baking, right? Okay, that was 5 or 6 kneads there, and I think that's good. So we're gonna shape this into a circle and then flatten it down a bit. You'll end up with a circle that's about 7 inches across, maybe 8 inches across. You're gonna flatten it like that, and then I'm gonna grab a knife. I'm gonna use a serrated knife because it cuts easier. You don't wanna go all the way through, but I'm gonna cut probably halfway in, and I'm gonna cut an X right into the dough. This is done for 2 reasons. If you listen to the people from Ireland that are still superstitious, they will tell you that the X on the top of the bread is to keep the evil spirits away. The real reason that we put the X on the top of the bread is that gives the bread a place to expand, and it won't crack and tear in places that you don't want it to. So you're controlling the rise by giving the expansion of the bread a place to go. Another benefit to my parchment, pick that bread up, pop it on your stone, and go straight back into the oven. And our Irish brown bread has been in the oven for about 43 minutes. I checked it at 35, wasn't quite ready. I'll show you how to check it in just a second, but 43 minutes, it's good to go, and take it out. Now your oven may be a little bit different. You can use a portable thermometer in there to make sure that it's baking at the right temperature, but you also just want to get used to recipes and see where there are hot spots and that kind of stuff. So I baked this right on the stone. The bottom should be good and brown as well. To see if this is ready, and it's hot, but I can still touch it, I'm just gonna flip it over and knock. Sounds hollow, it's ready. I'm gonna leave it on the stone for about 5 minutes, and then I'll take it off the stone and put it on a cooling rack so it can cool. I usually try to serve it still a little bit warm with dinner and get out that honey butter. So I've got the bread out. It's been sitting for a couple minutes. It's still really hot, but I'm not gonna be patient, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut into it and hope it's cooled enough for me to eat. Like I said, this is a pretty rustic loaf, so you're just gonna cut the pieces whatever size and shape you want. Sometimes we even just put it on the table and tear pieces off. I'm trying not to burn myself here. You can still see the steam. Looks like a really healthy loaf, but let me tell you, it is moist and tender. And when you add some of this honey butter on there, especially when it's warm, and just let it melt right in, it is delicious. I'm gonna take a bite, even though I'm probably gonna burn myself. Yeah, it's perfect. Sour cream keeps it really moist. The honey sweetens it up. Delicious. So happy St. Patrick's Day. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Bye.